Well, Christmas, a time of peace and goodwill to all. Is that what you've all been feeling over the last few days? I suspect that the reality is that for many of us, Christmas can seem more like a deadline than a holy day or a holiday. And with the borders newly opened and some sense of anxiety as to what lies ahead of us, with the world in turmoil and climate change hovering like a dark cloud, some might ask, so what can we celebrate at the moment anyway? So is this just a time then for sentimental feelings, family gatherings, pretty Christmas cards, Christmas carols, and some good food? Not that there's anything wrong with any of that at all. But is it just a matter of putting all our concerns aside for a few days and afterwards take up where we left off? Do we look at Christmas scenes and see just a tiny baby whose mother travelled on a cute donkey to a stable stuffed full of cuddly animals, along with some nice, caring shepherds and 3 wise men who came bearing the presents? Is that all there is to it? Or is there more? Well, the answer, there is so much more. Behind all the commercialisation and pretty jingles, the Christmas story is a vital one with life-giving messages for us all, and one we need to take to heart right now. It is, in fact, the story of a baby born to an unmarried mother from a religious family, with all the cultural and social pressures you can imagine. A mother who had to travel big distances in the final stages of pregnancy on the most uncomfortable form of transport available. The shepherds, far from being the lovable characters played by youngsters in nativity plays, were actually at that time people on the fringes of society. And the wise men, arriving with gifts primarily to worship this child, well, they were unwittingly being used by Herod to discover the whereabouts of the baby so he could be killed. All of this eventually forcing Mary and Joseph to flee as refugees, seeking asylum in Egypt. A confronting story in many ways, but regardless, one carrying messages of hope, peace, love, and joy. Luke starts his story at what was then the centre of the known universe, with a decree from the Emperor Augustus. This decree was to be obeyed by all, and this was overseen by the local governor. So these two were the major players, the ones who are very much in control with all the power. So why did Luke start here? Maybe because even then he could sense the global significance of this story, and he wanted to state that right at the beginning. But having set that scene, his focus then narrows dramatically, telescoping down to a young couple, absolute nobodies in every possible way, obeying the will of the emperor, whether they wanted to or not. What is stunning about this juxtaposition is that Luke is announcing that it is through the latter, the small, seemingly insignificant and powerless couple, rather than through the emperor and his empire, that God would save the world. It is an unexpected inversion of expectations that continues to reverberate through the ages, and importantly sets the pattern for how God acts in our world today. Few, if any, remember much about Augustus or Quirinius, yet millions of people will celebrate the birth of a child born to Mary and Joseph this week. When circumstances threaten to overwhelm and people feel that they have little control in their lives, one might be forgiven for thinking that God is absent or uncaring. But Luke, through his gospel, reminds us that God loves the world and continues to care for it, but not necessarily through the workings of governments and powerful people, but rather through the many small, easily overlooked gestures of love and faith, whether that be a helping hand of a neighbour, a meal offered with love, or the sacrifice of a congregation's traditions for public safety. God does not overwhelm us with majesty, but comes in these quiet and unexpected ways, changing, loving, and blessing the world. So look for hope and joy and peace and love beyond the headlines. Just a week or so ago, after the dreadful tornado in Kentucky, cameras focused on a dazed woman standing in the midst of her destroyed home. And she's looking around at people, strangers, all of them, who had come from nowhere and started the process of clearing and cleaning. They just appeared, she said. Consider the stories of scientists now working to rebuild the Great Barrier Reef, the amazing methods that they have come up with. Then there are the farmers looking for better ways to manage the drought. Doctors researching light therapy for managing Parkinson's disease. And just another breakthrough was announced on the news the other night. The list goes on and on and on. God at work behind the scenes, bringing healing and hope. And what about joy? Well, the TV reports of families being reunited after so many months apart have just filled my heart with joy. The smiles, the tears as grandparents met grandchildren for the first time, as parents were reunited with children who had been away for months, as people were finally able to return home. It was a wonderful, heartwarming scene. People recognising the importance of family and community. And then, of course, there is the joy at the thought of all those amazing people, a lot of you included in them, who have been prepared to step forward and be vaccinated for the sake of us all. Peace and love. Well, peace comes from knowing that God is indeed with us and will never abandon us. And love, well, it is all around. Sometimes, though, you just have to stop and look for it, and then you will see it. God loves us. He came into this world because of that love, and that is what we celebrate tonight. In the words of Richard Attenborough, there is a light in this world, a healing spirit more powerful than any darkness we may encounter. We sometimes lose sight of this force when there is suffering or too much pain. Then suddenly the Spirit will emerge through the lives of ordinary people who hear a call and answer in extraordinary ways. So let me finish with these beautiful words of Elar Nost. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended. Not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go, love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you. Amen.